Yeah, thank you, everyone. My wife says I don't need this, so I'm going to put it away a little bit. If you guys disagree, let me know. I'll speak louder. But I titled my talk, The Changing Nature of Reality, and I could fit kind of a lot of stuff into it. So I'm just going to tell you how I came here. I work in corrections right in this neighborhood, and I try to give people that I spend the day with some of what I'm going to share with you now. It's the piece of corrections that I actually believe in, not the piece that gets... See what you think. Decide for yourself. I'm also an attorney. Part of being here is to help these sacred medicines, these sacraments, gain the respectability that they deserve. The legal system, about 40, 50 years ago, got some chemistry and gave some things names and then said which ones you're allowed and which ones you're not. So we're working very hard at changing that and giving this the platform that it really deserves. These medicines are, especially the mushroom, some people call it the children. Grandmother ayahuasca, grandfather peyote, mushrooms children. And these have been locked in the basement. They've been locked away. And I want this audience to have the moral authority of freeing the children, unlocking the door, keeping them for the people, not locked away anymore. That's how I come to this with the legal authority. That's how I view this. I prayed in a bookstore right outside Half Price Books on 46th in Ford Parkway, and I got a book that came to me that brought me here. It's called Tales from the Time Loop by David Icke. If you're familiar with him, he will explain to you why war in Iraq is related to GMO foods. And there's also some shape-shifting reptiles in there and everything above, but very high-level conspiracy stuff. And I don't know if you've ever heard the joke, but what's the difference between the truth and a conspiracy? And the answer is 6 months. I don't know if you've heard that before, but it seems to be true, especially this. And I want to start with the changing nature of reality. I look at the masks here, and you look at that, and the idea of germ theory, it's about 100 years old. It comes with Louis Pasteur, pasteurizing milk, if you see your milk. It's a lot less scientific than you're led to believe. It's this idea, I've heard it described as seeing firefighters at a burning house and accusing the firefighters of starting it. That's what bacteria is, that's what viruses are, according to this model. I'm not landing there, just for discussion. So, germ theory, and I really like the idea. I've had to defend that idea that that's different. So one of the defenses to that is a possession model, a model where I think Terence McKenna or somebody similar would say the mushroom, I assert it's an alien, and when you give it to yourself, you actually are possessed by the spirit of this mushroom, and that's really powerful because you get to look at yourself from its perspective. And that's why it's useful for PTSD or addiction or depression, anything related to that. It's like looking up from the balcony at why you are the way you are, why you can do that. And as other indigenous cultures calling this a shamanic ally, that's what it was. It's an ally that you bring in, and like when I've participated with people or described the experience to them, I've said, like, think about it as inviting a friend over, and a friend who will show you things that you don't necessarily want to see and teach you things that you never thought you could learn. And that's what the mushroom is. And I have more of my experiences with ayahuasca. And I want to share a couple. My first psychedelic experience was probably getting off work at Famous Dave's when I was 16 years old, and me and the cook drove up and down I was the cook, but me and another employee drove up and down Lake Street and found some marijuana parked behind a school and used it. And that was the first time I felt the effects. And I was driving, and I started driving away, and I was smiling so much, I was touching my face like this. And I was like, whoa. And all of a sudden, a squirrel ran across the road, ran up a stop sign right to where it said stop, and jumped at the windshield. And I remembered like dodging out of the way of this squirrel. And I take away from that, like this opens these channels, which is what they say alcohol does and substances do for all kinds of entheogens. They open up channels. And I feel like the squirrel saw that open channel and decided there's a place for me. I'm in. And then if you look at what the squirrel spirit animal has, that fits my personality very well. I don't know if it did before that or not. It might have. but likes puzzles, problem solving, joyful, all that stuff. So that was my first cannabis experience. I was sitting in an ayahuasca ceremony, and this is the second round of ayahuasca is a healing round where the shaman would sit face to face with each person and sing right to them. And they would sing whatever song came. The plants that would come would be like shamanic allies in the medicine cabinet that they would call out via song. So our shaman was sitting right here, and I was looking. It wasn't my turn yet. It was one away from me. So I'm sitting there, and I'm looking, and he's singing this song. It's a powerful song. And he's singing, and I can see his face, and then I can see the second face superimposed over it. So they're both there. And I was sitting there kind of getting closer. Okay, there's one nose, there's one set of eyes. Had glasses, and it looked Asian to me. So after the ceremony's over, I asked him, I said, did you have any teachers that had glasses? And he said, oh yeah, this one and this one. I said, did any of them look Asian? He said, oh yeah. Don Marcial was his name. Peruvian, but he had short dark hair, and I could see how that looked Asian to you. And he said, oh yeah, and that was his song that I was singing to that person. And then he said, Samantha saw him too. So if you can take that and extrapolate from that, this is a technology that we're missing, and I think that they know about it, but if you see that and you can pull on that, what does it mean when a mother sings a song to a child? What does it mean when a warrior sings a song? What does it mean? If you believe that story, I can see both of these things here. And that's a powerful technology that people in this room can play on. And I think that, if anything, take that away and find something with that, because there's meat there. And it brings me back to that possession model, sharing space versus, I don't know how many holy books, I'm not super familiar with very many of them, but I don't think any of them say dive out of the way when somebody sneezes. I don't know how many Buddhas or Jesuses or Muhammads there were, except, they got sneezed on. And the psychedelic journey for me, it takes away the fear of what's going on right now. And I think that's why this conference is going. That's why Jade and Steve are blessed by the universe to pull this off. And it only takes this slightest amount of rebellion to get into a room like this and hear this, and then let it spin your own wheels and spin your own journey. And that's what I really want to congratulate everyone for being here. So that's a big deal. And it's both terrifying and inevitable. And I think once you see, I have a young daughter, and I couldn't do anything else because I see the way the world's heading, and it's just not sustainable. And it really looks like you've got a really difficult path ahead via replacing currency with a digital currency and a compliance-based move forward. That's what it looks like is happening here, and I'm happy to talk about that from the conspiracy perspective, but it really is, the psychedelic thing fits really nicely with that. If germ theory is not accurate, then how do STDs work? That was something that was a challenge that I really liked. How does sexually transmitted disease work if this germ theory thing isn't accurate? And I really like the idea of, I don't know if you're familiar with incubus or succubus. Those terms are demonic entities from sexual energy. And those two things are, I'll tell a story about an Appalachian folk magic person. So he said that when somebody had a wart in Appalachia, which spans Canada all the way to southern United States, the Appalachian Mountains, he said when somebody has a wart, what they would do to get rid of it is buy it from the person. So they'd exchange money, and then they'd exchange, in theory, they would buy the wart. And the spirit of the wart on the person didn't know who to go with. It didn't know if it should go with the person who bought it or the person it was originally with, and then it would disappear. And I think that that's fascinating. And it brings me back to each one of these other versions of that. The squirrel possession model, our shaman sitting with the two faces and the song and the wart. And I think there's a lot of stuff to dig in there. And if you ever want to see what I consider demonic entities that are sexualized, just take a look at the Kardashian clan. I don't want to disrespect anyone, but look at the wake that they leave behind them as they go. And they're as popular as ever. And take we'll move on from there, but that possession idea, I think it's in play. I'll tell another story. I have two family members who committed suicide. One would be a young cousin of mine, and one would be an uncle, her uncle also, that happened before when my dad was a teenager. And my young cousin, she was 2 years younger than me. She was getting her doctorate at Cornell. This happened 6 years ago. And she was not doing well, so she got brought down from upstate New York to Brooklyn, and her husband, who they were living separate while she was in school, found her on the rooftop of their Brooklyn apartment. Really rough story. I had been occupying my time with ayahuasca, and grandmothers, like some people would call it soul retrieval, or just that was being really present in these ceremonies with me. So one time I'm sitting, and I don't know if you're familiar with ayahuasca. You drink it like a tea, and it's after a while you feel the effects, and it kind of cleanses you and lets you get rid of baggage. You'll purge, and you'll have a bucket next to you. So I'm looking in my bucket, and your bucket becomes very alive. And you can, all of a sudden, there's kind of a rope bondage tied head in there that's alive, like eyes open, but just really frightening thing with like vomit and every kind of nasty feeling that you had. And I'm looking at it, and I'm, attaching this meaning to my cousin who she hung herself. I don't know if I mentioned that, but attaching that meaning to it. And all of a sudden, I like to call them the Mario Brothers. He hops out through the room, and he hops out, and we were in a house that had a kitchen, and it goes out and kind of into the other dimension, ether. And I look back at that story, and I think, I don't know if you've seen the Denzel Washington movie, The Fallen, where the demon can be touched and they transfer like that. But I called this the Hangman. And the creepy part about that ceremony was near the reservation by Mystic Lake in that area. And I felt like what happened was you're cleansing the DNA. Like this wasn't my trauma that I had, but it cleansed this one from my uncle and then my cousin and just down the line. And I think there's a really important thing to take away from that, because the creepy part of it is a few months later I heard a story of a international worker at Valley Fair. They hire international people. She's at the park down the road, and somebody calls her over, and she comes over, and the guy throws a rope around her neck and then either assaults her or tries to assault her. And I remember thinking, is that the Hangman? Did I get rid of that? And it went and infected this person, and then that happened? And I felt almost like a guilt from that. But I don't really feel the guilt, but I feel like that Fallen movie has a scene where the demon can only travel so many cubits in that story. So he tries to go in the middle of nowhere and kill himself and thinks he's going to kill the demon. Doesn't quite work out that way, but spoiler alert, sorry. But that is kind of how I took that story. It was really rough to think you cleansed yours, but it went somewhere else, and how do you feel about that? And I just, I feel like that's the message of the story. Like, your trauma being cleared is nice, but don't leave out other people who now have it. That ceremony, that was the power of that ceremony is, for me, just looking at a lineage that can be, it extends back to the beginning of humanity, and everyone's got it, and everyone's ties in, and those healings they're real, and I couldn't have found that through the doctor's office. I couldn't have found that through the pharmaceutical industry. And speaking of the pharmaceutical industry, do you know how they operated? They bought up medical schools. You can watch where it happened. They synthesized plants so they could patent them, and then they talked shit about the people who went to the plants. It's really fascinating marketing strategy. But it's now time for an undoing of that, and that's kind of how I view what's going on here. I don't know exactly how much time I have left, but the land ownership is another thing that really resonates with me. When I was in law school, these people are very smart, but they really want to be told what to think. And I'd just like to tell kind of a story. There's a person named Kate of Gaia, and they would talk about the legal name fraud. And there's a really different legal entity that's flesh and blood you and driver's license, birth certificate you. And I'd like to think of it as a Monopoly game, where if you want to play Monopoly, here are the rules. If your legal name is your game piece, your battleship or your top hat or whatever one. And that's what's given us what we've got now. It's contract law. It's also named as Uniform Commercial Code. It's got many different names, but it's contracting in, basically. Flesh and blood, you never contracted that. Your parents did it for you via the birth certificate. And there's a lot of maritime language in there, and that's not an accident. The title of my talk being The Changing Nature of Reality. What are these words? There's people who think that words are really magical, and they are the templates, and so we're using other people. So like go to school, learn a lesson, get education, adolescence, adult, and you break it down, and your school is a group of fish. Lesson means to lower things. Taught means to be pulled tight. Adolescence, you're addling your essence. What the hell are you doing? Why are you addling your essence? An adult, you know. And Laurel Erica, she does really good poetry with that. And I told Corey earlier, my great friend Corey, this was canceled yesterday, and I think that's because if you know the names of the week, we've got Sun's Day, we've got Moon's Day, we've got, if you know your Spanish, Martes, Mars Day, Miércoles, Mercury's Day, Jueves, Jupiter's Day, Viernes, Venus's Day, and yesterday, Saturn's Day. And Saturn is not a happy with a performance like this. They don't like this stuff. Saturn, if you know the nature of Saturn, it's kind of control grid. So it doesn't surprise me that we had to step out of yesterday and move into today. I got my 5-minute limit here, so I'll just... The name, if we started building a piece of property over there, the cops would eventually come by and say, you can't build there. And we'd say, why not? And they'd say, because you don't own it. And I say, own it? Who the hell owns it? And then they'd go and get some piece of paper somewhere that has letters and numbers on it that says, parcel number 123 owned by person ABC. That's fake. That's fake news. It's not real land ownership. Nobody's ever owned her. They never did. It's only been this way for a little while. And to see that crumble, which is a part of what this is, you don't own the nature, you never did. The bad news is you don't really own your house. The good news is if you're in tune with the land, it'll get your back. I really feel that way. And that's what's falling apart here. I'll also do the police situation. You're pulled over. Can I have your license? Don't have one. What's your name? What makes you think I have a name? Name originated from no man, I've heard. Don't know if that's true, but no man is na me. Do your business without me having a name. Where do you live? I'm alive right here. When were you born? How the hell should I know? I was a fucking baby. Sorry. But like this is all, and all of a sudden it breaks. It doesn't work anymore. So this is the idea of like who owes the taxes? It's the piece of paper. It's the birth certificate. It's the monopoly piece. Who has the luxury tax? Who goes to jail? And we're not talking about a get out of jail free card, like to get out of your karma. You're going to go through that. But this is contracting into something that you don't really want to. And to watch it fall apart, where all these plant medicines become alive again, and you become alive again. Kate of Gaia would say that you're agreeing to be dead when you identify as the driver's license or the birth certificate. So there's no consequences for killing you. You've already agreed to be dead. And pull on that thread. See what happens when that goes away. It's really powerful stuff. And it really, when William was speaking there, these are codes. When you sit with their codes and you use their template for reality, you're going to go where they're sending you. And if you want to make your own, you have to go off-roading. And that's what we're here, and I really appreciate the time. Thank you.